Been a doorman for many years. He's worked with Tony Tucker, Lee Chapman, Mr. Mick Kelly.
The rougher clubs had Lenny in it. He was an interesting character. I liked him a lot. Here's Romford. He says, well, how far is it? I said, that much. That'll do. This is where I met up with Tony Tucker and Chapman. There were some monsters on that road. And a guy gets up, he's all dizzy, he goes to his pocket, hands me a card. You've just been visited by the ICF. You're supposed to do this when you win. And we just poured out. We just ignored Shaw. I knew that Lee was going to clean him out. Tucker, if he hadn't gone down the route he did with the drug, he would have made millions, I think, in whatever business he went into. Because he was ruthless, but at the same time could charm. You brought the Queen to Tottenham. Full regalia.
Really was that.
Ian Tucker and Dave Courtney came into the office. Are you making? Yeah. I'm here to protect you. The robbery was the reason that Tucker was killed. Orchestrated by a doorman in Ipswich called Dave Cost. After came along and squirted him and nearly pulled out a knife. Ran off. Carlton went to collect money on a job that Tony was owed money for, and they just left. Now I have a new monster.
And out of pack, yeah.
Welcome back to season 4 of the Criminal Connection podcast. My name's Terry Stone, aka the Podfather. I want to say a massive thank you to all our supporters, all our subscribers for sharing and viewing our YouTube channel. We've hit over 6 million views. We are well on our way to 100,000 subscribers, and that is a big thanks to you. I also want to say a massive thank you to our season 4 sponsors. Without your help and support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Big thanks to our sponsor, IME. This global tech outfit ain't messing about. They've got these slick video interviews that have you connecting like there's no tomorrow. Whether you're running a business, running the streets, or doing your own thing. Perfect for those in marketing, recruitment, admissions, and even for auditions. And their platform, smooth as silk, designed with you lot in mind. IME's the ticket to making those connections count. VIP security services have been established for 35 years. VIP Security offers a personal security service to escort you, your family, and your friends, whether on business or out for the evening. Protect what's important to you. We're watching you while others are watching us. Prevention is always better than the cure. You're in safe hands. Security solutions across Essex, London, and the home counties. I want to say a huge thanks to our sponsors, Fragrance du Bois. Now, for those of you that don't know about Fragrance du Bois, where have you been? It is one of the leading luxury fragrances, only available in Harrods, Selfridges, and Neiman Marcus in New York. This brand is indulging in pure luxury. It's crafted from the rarest and finest ingredients. Each fragrance tells a story of timeless elegance, and that's why the Podfather wears it. The Podfather does have a personal favourite. It's called Oud Bleu Intense. So for anybody that likes Oud Parfum, that one for me is the one. But they've got so many different fragrances for men, for women. All of the fragrances are unisex, so make sure you get involved and sample the delights of Fragrance du Bois. Every time I film an episode of the Criminal Connection podcast, every guest I've had, I've always said the same thing. Cool, Terry, that smells nice, what's that? And I say, it's Fragrance du Bois. And they go, what's that? And I'll give them a link, I'll give them 10% off, and they buy a bottle. So make sure you get involved. For all the Criminal Connection podcast crew, we've got a special discount for you. 10% off. All you need to do when you click on the link below and choose your luxury fragrance is to put in CCPOD10 for the 10% discount. Just click on the link below to discover your signature scent today.
Welcome back to the Criminal Connection podcast. My name's Terry Stone, and today we've got a very special guest, Mick Kelly. He's been a doorman for many years. He's worked with Tony Tucker, Lee Chapman. He's been around Paranoia Mahoney. I've even had a tear up with him in Tottenham at one of my raves. So this man is a legend. So please put your hands together for Mr. Mick Kelly. Woo!
Thanks, guys.
Good to see you,
Thank
Mick.
you, Terry.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good.
Yeah, it's good to see you after all these years.
Yeah. Aging disgracefully, but there you go.
No, you still look great.
Yeah,
you still look
I
great.
try.
You
How
do
are
look
you?
great. You still do a bit in the gym?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Just trying to stay fit now rather than get big.
So
I dropped from 20 stone back down to 18, so I'm keeping it at that.
Fucking hell, you 20 start with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So obviously I've seen a couple of podcasts you've done, but obviously I remember you back from One Nation at Club UN, which we'll talk about
Later on.
But just really for all the listeners and viewers who don't know who Mick Kelly is, it'd be great just to find out, you know, a little bit about you, where you grew up, you know, what your childhood was like.
I come from the mean streets of Templemore in Ireland, you know. I spoke to a few friends of mine, Paddy and Alan, you know, they were asking me, what type of background are you going to have? Like, because all these guys on podcasts, you know, they come from real deprivation, you know, alcoholic father, abusive father, mother with more kids than teeth. Like, I come from real middle-class background. Had a wonderful childhood until I got to school, and that's where it sort of went a bit wrong from there. But
All my pals, all my Irish pals, they can all fight.
yeah, we grew up in the 70s. No TV, 2 TV channels. We didn't care. Our parents cared about that. So we're always out in the woods, building camps, fighting. And as you get to 16, 17, and you get a hold of your father's car, off chasing women and fighting with the next town, the next village. And that was sort of our weekly entertainment.
Right.
Every Friday, every Saturday, I'd be in a fight.
Fight night.
Yeah. And the more experience and the better you got at it, the further out you went, or people came looking for you. And it was all very civilized, you know. They'd meet me in a town, say, you coming out Friday? Yeah. How many have you got? 20. Okay, we'll have 20 waiting for you. It would all be lined up, you know. It was like a football match.
And with the fighting for you, Mick, did you ever box or do any martial arts?
Started off fighting on the street, and then went into karate. But karate was it was a Shotogan karate, which was very non-contact, but it was brilliant for fitness.
Yeah.
We do like wheelbarrow races on our knuckles, harden up and all this, but you had no end product.
Right.
So from there I went into kickboxing. But there was no boxing in my area at the time. So when I came to England first, I tried to be, I worked on the buildings, obviously, like most Irish. And then on the weekends, I'd be sparring or boxing, I was thinking of like maybe I'll make a go of it, you know. But I didn't have the boxing skills. I was a kickboxer, I was 16 stone, and by then the big guys came in, you know. So I used to spar with the likes of Funso Banjo and a few British heavyweights. But they were all these were smaller guys, and they were already 17, 18 stone. After that, all the Lennox Lewis, Gary Masons, they're all big guys, you know. So I thought, this is not for me. I met a lot of sparring partners that were professional. That was their job. And every one of them had a broken ear, broken nose, no teeth, telling us it's great business, great money. And I'm looking at it thinking, yeah, right, I'm not doing this. So I got into door work while I was doing the buildings.
That was in Ireland?
No, that was here.
Oh, in England.
Yeah, I came here. I came to France first. I chased a girl over to France, and then I got a job on the buildings in England. And once I hit London, like I decided to stay, because I came here when I was young. I came here when I was 16. I used to play chess, and I was on the Irish international chess team, and there was a world title, I think it was 1976. It was held in London, and the best kids in Ireland and England were brought over, like to, you know, for TV show, play chess with the champion type of thing. So that was the first time I saw London. I always knew I wanted to come back. So when I got a chance, I was 22 or 3 when I came over. Then I was working in the tax office, civil servant, and it wasn't for me. I was too wild to be sitting beside a couch, and I just left. And it caused me problems. My father and mother went spare, you know, leaving home and 100 quid in my pocket and don't know what I want to do, you know. And I didn't know myself. I just knew I wanted to go. And so it was quite easy work on the buildings because I was a big fella, you know. And here, take this hammer or hatch, you know, knock that wall down, you know. I was the lump. Anything that was to be knocked, give them the hammer, go knock that. And they flogged me to death for 3 or 4 years. So when I got doing the door work, there was as much money in that. So once we got to Hollywoods.
Was that the first proper
No, I was working in London first as a kid, really, you know, raw kid now, for Stringfellow. And he had 3 clubs. So I worked for him and a guy called Lenny Bloom in Fredenzie's and White's. And I worked some nights in... never worked Stringfellows itself, only the top doorman and the good-looking doorman worked there because it was very much a celebrity club.
You have to have a perm hair.
The rougher clubs had Lenny in it, so I worked with Lenny on a good few occasions. And he was an interesting character. I liked him a lot, but he was very intense and didn't do any work. He just sat in there. We had to do all the work. But then anytime there was trouble, then Lenny would come bowling out And he'd knock us over quicker than he'd knock the guys over because he was just so big and he used his weight, and gruff and thing. But always looked after us, in a rough way. I had a lot of time for him. But wasn't a sparkling personality or wit, Right. We all can't be, Yeah. From there then, because I had no car or anything, and I the trains would stop at 1, I'd be there till 3 and I'd have to walk home 8 miles. It's madness. So the company I was working with put me up in Barnet, and that's where I learned the game. I worked with a guy called Bob Meyer and his sidekick, Frank Betts. Frank was a giant, 22, 3 stone, really good looking fella, and Bob was a kickboxer and an ex-Marine bodyguard. He was King Saud's bodyguard at the end of his life before he died. Like, he was gifted. And before that, I used to stand at the door. If anyone said anything, bang. No discussion, none of anything. I was just a raw kid. Hit him, yeah. That was it. But he said, look, that guy's there. He's angry and he's giving you crap because he's with his girlfriend. His chest is out. Let him have that. He's not going to attack you. He's just going to shout out and go away and tell his girlfriend. To see how I sorted out that, You need to allow them to do that. The bad guys will come and you'll see it. They'll sidle up. And once the foot goes back, he always taught me, I never forget it. He said, if they're standing straight on, they're just discussing. The second he puts his right foot back, it means he's lining up the haymaker because that's all they got. He's not skilled. So he wants this big over the top. So tell him, oh yeah, see what you're at. It's not going to work. I'll be over there. As soon as
you put your foot there, you're hitting them.
Yeah. And before you throw that punch, I'll be standing there and then you're done. And they'd be like, oh, okay. But so you try not to fight because the fighters will always come. But lucky for me, what changed for us was the manager of the pub that we were working in Barnet got a new job as manager of a club in Romford. And he said, will you come with us, And Bob was going off to be the head minder for the Sultan of Brunei. And he tried to get me to work, but I was too young and they just laughed at me, because it was all soldiers got that job. It was huge money. I remember at the time it was £800 a week, and I thought,
I'll have some of that.
I'll have some of that. But no, they just laughed at me. They said, nah, go away, So I said, I will take this job, And he says, it's in Romford, So my friend Nev, I said, where's Romford? We didn't want to ask, so we got an A to Z out and we looked at him. Oh, there's Romford. He says, well, how far is it? I said, it's that much. That'll do. Can't be that far. So we went working there. And this is where I met up with Tony Tucker and Chapman. It was...
Were they already on the door there? Or?
It hadn't even opened.
Right.
A security company from Southend had picked the door. We were the only two that came with the manager. So we all had this orientation about a week or two before it opened, to meet the other doorman, to meet the managers, ask any questions.
So who was there? So there was yourself?
Oh, I can go through them. From Southend came Andy Williams. He was the head doorman. With Lee Chapman, Tony Tucker, Steve Luke, Cliff Good, and Gary Mutt. They were all from the Southend area. Then from Romford area alone, there was Roger Robinson, Roger Berkeley, Dave Redwayne, Clinton and Jimmy, two black guys. And myself and Neville then came from North London. So it was about a 14-man squad, and 12 would work on any weekend.
You probably needed them people as well.
Yeah, there was other doormen then came in because they all had friends of doormen, so to do extra nights. Mark Cartwell, Dave Causton. There were some monsters on that door. It was an astonishing club. They used an Italian architect to build it from scratch. And I think it was the first in London in the home counties that was built for the modern disco. All the others were like the Tottenham Royal, which became the club you went, just big old dance halls with a ball in the middle. And they'd be rejigged into a modern nightclub. But this was built from scratch. It had a floating, moving floor. Whoever came up with that idea. 50-foot revolving
Did it spin
floor.
round?
Yeah.
That must have been fucked up because you're standing there talking to someone and then when you finish talking to them, you're on the other side of the club.
About to say that. We used to laugh, because you'd have girls, and around the dance floor were all the bars and all these standing podiums. First time I'd ever seen a standing podium. They didn't want people sitting down, You had benches in the corners, But outside near the dance floor was all these standing. So you'd put your bag down, your drinks there, and they'd be talking, then they'd get on the dance floor. And then they'd finish and they'd say thank you, and they'd turn around to get off, and they realised, well, where am I? They're all the way over there. Because it was really slow, but it would move you along. Yeah. And they'd lose their bags, and they'd lose their mates and everything. And then they started doing, it was a fun place. They did these beach nights, you know. They brought in 14 tons of sand, and they didn't realise that we have no lift. So the poor old bar staff were all hired to come in and carry these bags up and down the stairs. And they spread out the dance floor, and they had this great night. And then they realised they'd killed the motors inside the floor. So all the sand went down into it and got into the gears and go around to a halt. So they decided, okay, we'll turn it off. So that was that. The fighting that went on in there. We had a night there once. Chapman was involved in most of them, where you could get an alarm go off on a bar, and the nearest doorman would go there. But if a DJ ever hit the alarm, that's a panic, what we call a panic button, and everyone went. Because we didn't have radios back then, so we had to use the buttons. And the panic button and 2 bar alarms went off. We don't know what the hell is going on. So we ran from downstairs, and the doorman upstairs all ran to it. And we saw this huge crowd at one of the exits trying to get out. And there was punches being thrown. We didn't know what was going on. So we decided to shove them all out and figure out outside what's going on and who's going out. Next thing we look down, we see Chapman and 2 other doormen at the bottom punching the life out of them at the bottom, and the other guys were trying to get at them. So then we quickly realised now it's time to sort out. So we went punching them from behind, and we had them wedged. We spent 15 minutes beating the crap out of these guys. It turns out, anyway, we threw them all out. They were knocked out all over the place. And a guy gets up, he's all dizzy, and he goes to his pocket and he hands me a card. You've just been visited by the ICF. And I thought, you're supposed to do this when you win. there were all these young ICF guys, the next generation, you know. Right. He hands me the card, and his eye was hanging out, like, and I'm thinking, you're supposed to do this, like, you know, take it away, go away. But the police then arrested 3 of us. Myself, Lee, and Roger Barkley were taken off to the cells. And we said, well, there's no one back in the club. You can't take us all away, you know. So they said, okay, we'll take 3 of you. This is how mad it was back in those days, you know. And kept us there till the club closed, and then threw us out. You know, stop more fighting. But I loved that place. Because you'd have, the boring nights were the best. Because you had, doormen back then were either very egotistical and very confident, or had no confidence and just like built themselves up, you know, but they carried their trauma with them, you know. Right. And the likes of Gary Mott and myself, and a few others, would find those guys and pick at them, you know. And Pierre, one of them was Pierre, elegant, good-looking black guy, 6'5", you know, always well-dressed, you know, loved himself, you know. But we could see he had little weaknesses, you know, like if you said he's putting on weight, he'd go, what do you mean? And so one day Gary Mott comes to me, and a few other them, he says, I'll get his trousers down tonight. He said, he's too vain for that. He says, no, I bet you're a fiver. I said, okay. And a few of us bet with him. At the end of the night, we're in the changing room, and he goes, Gary drops his trousers and starts going with the leg like this, you know. Next thing, Pierre drops his trousers, starts doing the thing. He had arranged with Pierre, he had an argument with Pierre that he had bigger legs than him. And he knew Pierre would bite. He said, no. He said, okay, we'll have the doorman decide who the winner is. Dropped his trousers, and he turned around and said, okay, 5 in front of Pierre took.
So there was a famous incident at Hollywood's with Roy Shaw.
Yeah, that was...
And Lee obviously gave his version of events, and then obviously Roy Shaw did videos and talking about it online. But what actually happened that night, Mick? Was you there?
Yeah, well, Lee, as you can see, everything is just matter of fact with Lee, you know. It was a lot more dramatic than that. He came in the first night, and he was very friendly to everyone, but he wasn't supposed to be let in, but we didn't know who he was. So he got in, and he came in with this Irish guy who introduced himself to me and introduced me to Roy. I remember shaking his hand and thinking, oh shit, this is the guy that shouldn't be in here, you know. So I went to the management. I think it's him, but I don't know. But he ended up in the VIP, and he was fine, and people were taking pictures. Then we knew who he was, like. But at the end of the night, and this was a habit of his, At the end of the night, he decided when he was going home, not you. And he was making his mark on a brand new, this was the opening night of a £5 million nightclub in 1988. This place took 90 grand a week. It wasn't going to be messing with the likes of Roy Shaw, you know. Roy was a relic of the 70s and 60s. This was now the 80s going into the 90s. It had changed. And he was asked at the end of the night, come on, gentlemen, drink up. That's all it was. But Doorman tapped him on the shoulder to drink up and go. And he got up with his glass like that. And it was Steve Luke. He threatened Steve Luke with the glass. And the Irish guy that was with him, because the doorman ran up, like, they want to start him there. But the management panicked because it was a VIP bar with a grand piano and a pianist and all the women, you know, in bunny outfits. It was a beautiful place. They didn't want to fight, like, on the opening night to destroy the place. So the Irish fella came to me and said, look, can you sort it out? I said, yeah, no problem. I went, look, just leave now and there'll be no problem. So he left. Doorman were stewing about it. They wanted to do him there and then. But he also knew. So the following week then, I think it was the following Friday, he came back. But this time he came back with 10 guys, other car dealers. He had a car dealership only 4 miles from Hollywood. And there was 2 guys there that I didn't like. They were Greek brothers. They were arrogant. It was back in the Harry Enfield days, you know, loads of money. And he made a statement to me one time. I blocked him a couple of nights before that. He went, my watch is worth more than you'll earn all night. Ironically, he was telling the truth, you know. We weren't on good money and his watch was a good watch. And he was with him, you know. And what happened was it was all glass doors. And we wouldn't let him in. Whoever the doorman was, I was upstairs. One of the doormen let him in. And they started acting up, you know. They were with Roy. You see, this was the problem. It wasn't even his fault. It was his psychics. We're with Roy. So we're as hard as him. We can do what we like. So they're banging on the thing. Doing this, you know, to Doorman, like, you're not going to get away with that. But the management were wusses, and they were saying, no, you're not. If you go out, you're going to get sacked. Do not go out there. So there was this pregnant pause where we're inside. So we all come running from upstairs. Eventually decided, like, Lee was there and he just took the lock off the door and said, we can't keep listening to this. They're kicking the door and Shaw had stripped off and everything. So the fight was inevitable. But the management trying to tell us, you'll all get sacked now if you go out. And we're thinking, I don't care, it's worth it, you know. So once Lee decided I'm going, we all poured out. He went straight into Shaw, headbutted him back. Shaw moved in on him and he did his flip. He had this famous flip. He could lift himself 5 feet off the ground and twist around and come down on him. And we just poured out and we just ignored Shaw. I knew that Lee was going to clean him out. We'd only get in the way. So I went after one of the Greek brothers. Neville went after the other brother who tried to get away for whatever reason. He tried to climb under a van or a bus or something. And Neville was kicking him in and then went in after him and dragging him out. We ended up being spread all over the car park. The cops used to always park there at the bus station and they drove off. I think they were waiting for this chance, you know, that Shaw's going to get it here now and leave it alone, you know. So they drove off. And once they did that, we were not stopping. And when it was all over, I don't know, many ambulances came. The place was flooded. The police came back and ambulances came and they took them all away. And at the end of the night, we were gone home. And apparently Shaw came back with a hammer and he was hanging around in the car park. And the police had to take him away again and bring him back to the hospital. Or the police. No one knows. But of course, Essex is a place of Chinese whispers. Everyone was coming in. You made a mistake there, son. Oh, you're really in trouble, you know what I mean? All of this. And it got around quick. And it got around at least, sorted him out, you know. But we were all going to get it, you know. Because so I decided with a load of Irishmen to mine, a few of the doormen I knew from North London, I thought I'd take them from outside. We'll go into what was at the time the most famous gangster pub. It's called the Brewery Tap in Barking. Now, it wouldn't be Shaw's pub or anything, but that didn't matter. The point was we were going to go in and make a big statement that we were looking for him, knowing that to get back to him, but more so knowing that to get back to all his friends. Because there was talk, and I knew for sure from a few people that they were considering coming and doing the door, you know. So we had to try and sway that. So we went over to the pub and walked in, locked the doors, and went running around, roaring and shouting for Shaw, like, that we wanted to get him. And that was the end of it. But he used to do these weird things. He'd come down on a monthly basis, out of the blue, you know. Before we even opened, he'd be down there at like 8 o'clock or something. And he'd just be standing there looking at the door, you know. Sometimes writing car number plates down, you know. He wasn't right. Poor chap, he just wasn't right. I got a lot of criticism when I spoke about this before online and on podcasts, you know, because he's fairly loved, Roy Shaw. It depends on who you are, I assume.
Do you know something? I met Roy a couple of times at some charity boxing events, and he was always with Joe Pole, Tony Lambriano, Freddie Foreman. There was always a little group of them. And I always found him, you know, to be absolutely fine. But again, you know, this is probably 15 years ago. So obviously the time we're talking was probably when he was a lot younger. So he's probably a bit more fiery.
Lee got it wrong. He wasn't as old as that. He was 51 exactly when he came to Hollywood. So he still was fiery enough. But it was some of his friends that were dangerous enough too. A younger crowd were hanging on to him and wanted to prove. See, the problem is if you have a fight with Roy Shaw, you're guaranteed that they're going to jump in because they want to be the ones to save Roy Shaw, his mate, you know, and blah, blah, blah. So we're well aware of that. So we decided earlier on that demolition was the only way. There was none of this like throw him out or give him a slap and let him go because it's coming back. Demolish them, all of them, so that this is only what happens now. If you come back with a crowd, we won't take prisoners the next time at all. You know, we didn't use any weapons or anything, but it was always stated there, if you want to go down that route, we can. But what people don't know, and I should have said it before, but I always thought I was blessed, you know. I always had someone looking out for me. I always thought God has a sense of humor. About a year later, less than a year later, 6 months later, this stunner walked into Hollywood one night, and I was with Lee in the door, and I just went cold, like, and all the boys were laughing at me, you know. I was like, God, this is my future wife, and she was from West Africa. She used to come and spend her summers in England. So herself and her mother used to come and spend the summers with her aunt, who lived in a nice area in Emerson Park, in their house. And the aunt was only going out with a guy called Freddie Botham. And I was introduced to him, a lovely guy. And he had all these parties they'd go to, you know, and once I started dating her, I'd follow along to these parties, and then one of them was in the brewery tap. I'm going, who's this Freddie Botham? Oh, he's Roy Shaw's best mate. And I'm going, God almighty. I'm walked in, and I'm thinking, we beat him up, we barred him. It was just a who's who of gangsters were in there, you know. And this was, you know, this was the crowd now I was going to be getting to know, you know. So I just thought it was funny. The guy who owned it was a guy called Frank Salmon. He was a gangster himself who ran the pub. And Frank, I loved him, like, you know. Some people he was the worst of the worst. To others, again, like, you know, you talk about the best of the best. It depends on where you are. Like, we all lived in this grey line. Some veered off to the evil and some veered off to just being the honest Joe Soap, you know. The rest of us sort of swayed in along, you know. And Frank thought he was in the 1920s Chicago. He had a protection racket going on in Canning Town and overall East London and all that area and parking. And all the shops paid him money, and he'd go around. We had a party there one night. I think it was my wife's aunt's birthday. And it was a big party in the brewery tap, and we were there. And I had finished work and had gone over afterwards, and I was half asleep, you know. And Frank was there with his girlfriend. He disappeared. He got a phone call and he disappeared. Came back, and he was all sweat up and frustrated, and she was crying, and we were going, what's going on? He's just gone around, and he ran out of money on the night, and he thought, I'll go get it off Terry. And banged on the door of this kebab shop, went in and held them up for the gun, give me the till, went back, then bought us all around. It's just madness.
That was an expensive kebab.
Seriously. Carried us in Essex. But as an outsider, as an Irish guy, I saw that there was this reverence for gangsters that, wasn't deserved. And, for years they lived on their reputations and people didn't question it or check it. And that's all right. You don't have to question or check it, but you should never allow them to step over the mark into your life and interfere in your life just because they have a reputation. This is what Shaw did to a lot of smaller pubs with 2 doormen on it. I know for a fact that Shaw was beating up doormen.
He used to like fighting, didn't he? He just loved having his hair.
Yeah. So why should we have sat back? People do question me and say, well, why did you do that to him? Poor chap, he's old man, you know what I mean? He was 51, he wasn't old, and he asked for it. What was he supposed to do? Just say, oh, it's Rye, Please stop, Rye. That doesn't work. This is the real world. It doesn't work. You meet out violence with violence, or you're a victim. And funny enough, Hollywood's quieting down dramatically after that. We had a few big incidents like the ICF one.
Was Tony Tucker actually working there on the door with you?
Yes, from day one.
Right, okay.
He arrived with the South End crowd. He was quiet in the beginning because he wasn't one of the bigger, harder guys. I didn't particularly like him. He was moody and quiet, and he had
a lovely head of hair, though, didn't he?
I'm not saying anything about that. I'm not saying anything about the wig.
No, because everyone used to call him Wiggy, didn't they? That was his nickname.
Yeah, well, what it was, I had hair similar. I actually have a picture of it. I have hair similar to that. That was an 80s hairstyle. But what happened was in 89, a film came out called Full Metal Jacket. War film. Do you remember that film? And in it, they were all called jar heads because they had these jars, lid jars, lid on top of their head, flat top. And I remember we discussed it. We thought, wow, we should look like that. That looks hard, So we all shaved our heads, like overnight. Tony wouldn't. He joked me. He had these locks, He used to put Brill cream and stuff through it. I never heard of a man putting all this, moisturising himself.
If he was around now, he'd probably be an actor and he'd probably be doing adverts, wouldn't he? The hair thing.
Absolutely. I just thought he was like, who puts moisturiser on? I come from a bog Irish town, You'd be ostracised if you did that, But then I realised soon after, a lot of Essex is like that, which start like in 89, it really started, the Hollywood particularly. It became a sort of celebrity club, and we started noticing guys coming in mauve T-shirts and lilac and colours that, you just don't see. And all of a sudden, like, they're very girly colours. But guys, just real men wear pink.
That's true.
One guy said that to me, And fair enough, that's the way it was. And I loved Essex. Like, I worked originally in Herefordshire with Bob and them. And the people are very polite, very friendly, but they're cold. There was always this is where I live and this is where you live, and there's a line in between, super polite. But in Essex, there was none of that. It was, geezer, give me a hug. And everyone was slapping you on the back, cursing you, or loving you, whichever, but always with high energy. And everyone was on the make. I mean, I never paid for a tyre for my car for 5 years. There was always someone saying, Mick, your car, I'd say, your XR3. I had an XR3, God, a red one. So I bought into that.
That's good.
Real men wear pink as well.
I think when I grew up, I wanted an XR2i, but then when I got to the point where I could get one, I was too big, so I got an XR3i. And if you were a real fucking baller, you had the RS Cosworth, with a fin on the back. That was if you were like really pushing the boat out.
Yeah, the Cosworth. Oh, and the guys who had the Cosworths, they focused only on that. I remember one guy used to come down, Steve was his name, he used to come to Secrets. He had one, and he was telling me he cleaned the engine. I went, what do you mean you cleaned the engine? You got what? No, Mick. I go in with a toothbrush. He's serious? He went, yeah. Spotless, Mick, Like, they were like that, But, they were very vain people, and Tucker was the vainest of them all.
Right. Was he spending a lot of time in the mirror?
I'm sure he had his own mirror,
Right.
He was a funny guy. They threw out an Irish fella one day. Oh, stop, he's a little fella. And they called me, and I used to hate that, one of yours. It's probably even if it was a gypsy, like it was one of mine, come over and sort them. I said, why do I have to sort them? You've sorted them.
You speak the same language, Mick.
Yeah. And this guy was going, I'm going to freaking burn this place. I'm going to blow this place up, blah, blah, blah. Quick as anything, Tucker leaned out. He said, hang on a bit, mate. Gave him a match. Gave him a box. Have at it, you know what I mean? Burn it down, That sort of dead sense of humour, mocking sense of humour, Your man got all upset and stormed off. Tony was one of those, sort of in the background originally, but he developed the habit of setting people against each other, That Mick Kelly was talking about you, I wouldn't let him away with that. Then he come to me and said, that Jimmy was talking about you. And he used to enjoy setting people against each other.
Right.
And,
So he just basically sort of...
yeah. He was very manipulative. Started off with just a few girls on the bar. He'd be dating one and the other, and he'd be getting drinks. And there'd always be mess with women,
Have you ever seen him actually have a fight, though? Did he...
Not in the early days, but then we'd all go out. Faction fighting was my forte. That's all we did in Ireland. And faction fighting is when 10 guys go out. You have certain roles. You just don't all ball out, you know what I mean?
Right.
So the bigger guys go through the middle because that's where the best of their guys are. Will always be up front and centre. And I'd always tell guys that weren't great at fighting, because I used to hire a lot of doormen that weren't great at fighting. But they'd have other skills that I'd like. They were good talkers or whatever, But I used to always tell them, come around from the sides. You'll only get in my way and I'll get in your way. Come around the sides. When they ball in and those, come in at the side and hit them. They won't see you coming and you'll have a free run, And Tucker was like that. He'd come in behind or inside. And he'd fight as well, but he didn't like being hit.
Right.
He just, he actually said that to me one day. I'll leave that to you, Mick. He was a good-looking fella. And he never had any problem with the women. But he thought he was a better looking fella than he actually was. He just, I don't know. Again, it's an Essex thing, Not all of them are like that, Lee had a lot of women after him too, but he didn't care if he got hit with a sledgehammer or a punch, Some people are like that, but yeah, Tucker was, he rated himself. That's all I can say, he rated himself. He had a confidence. I found that early now. He had a severe confidence, even though he wasn't as good a fighter as the other guys, but that didn't bother him. He knew Tucker, if he hadn't gone down the route he did with the drugs, he would have made millions, I think, in whatever business he went into, because he was ruthless, but at the same time could charm. I had no charm back then, I didn't care if you came in or what you did, this is my job. This is what I'm doing. I'm running the doors and I'm running it as efficiently as I can. But other guys were smart enough to think, oh, that guy, he runs a car front, I'm looking for a new car next year, and he'd befriend him. And this guy runs a good wine bar down there, and I'll befriend him. And all that friendship then eventually will get you somewhere else, and that's how life works. Tony saw that from the very beginning. He was shrewd like that. And he used to work his way around him, And a lot of people don't know this, I suppose, because it's never mentioned, but he was a great sportsman. See, Tony, yes, he got into bodybuilding very late. Probably by 1990 he got into it. But before that, it was all sports. Judo was his sport and football. He played for Orient. He was a youth for Orient.
Didn't even know.
Yeah. There's a picture of it somewhere. He then went into judo. He was pretty good at that. He didn't drink like some of the guys did. When we go out partying, he'd have a few drinks, but he didn't get drunk and fall down. That was not his style. You'd never see him drunk and falling down. And perfect example of how he's manipulated is how I got out of Hollywood. I was running the door. It was running great. I had it exactly the way I wanted it. But the director of Hollywood bought his own club. He wanted to go off on his own. And he got the South End Security Company, which we work for, to set up that door. And Hollywoods wouldn't accept it. They just said, no, they're a big competition for us. They were opening up in Dartford. It's called Zen's in Dartford. It was too close. And he also knew how they operated, and he also had the base. And he said he could take some of those people over there, with invitations and blah, blah. So they said no. So the security company had a decision, and they decided to go with him. It's the new club, the new ring. We'd probably be better off with him. And so I thought, right, I'll get the contract. And I had that Irish naivety. I said, I'll wait. Because I'm doing such a great job, they know that. They'll recognize that, and I will get it. And this is what I meant, the difference between myself and Tony. You know, I wasn't sharp enough to see what was coming. I didn't, maybe even arrogance, you know. Why wouldn't they give it to me? Like, I'm the boss here, you know. But what was happening was Tony was taking the new director out for dinner, horse riding. Tony was big horse riding. He had 2 horses. Trips down to London, you know, to fancy restaurants and all of this. And he was working him. And all of a sudden I got called up one day, and there was the director, and Tony standing beside him, thinking, why is Tony standing here? He says, Mick, you're doing a great job. We want you to stay working here because you're doing a fabulous job, but we're giving the contract to Tony. And I'm thinking, sorry, what? And Tony was going, yeah, Mick, me and you know, team, buddy, you know, we're going to run this place, you know. And I'm looking at it, and then I realized what's happening. The contract's been given to Tony, and how did that happen? Like, why him? There's other doormen there they could have picked as well, better ones. I only found out afterwards what he had done. But I remember thinking, there was a stiletto letter opener. Everyone had one. All the officers had one back in the 90s, you know. Slit the letter up. I remember thinking, I'm just going to stick this in him in a minute. Like, I was raging. And I just exploded. Exploded on the 2 of them. Cursed the 2 of them out. I didn't know him, so I didn't really care, but I cursed out Tony. And I went downstairs, and then the others found out about it. And a couple of doormen thought it was great, because one of the doormen now had it. And I thought, it should have been mine, you know. So I stormed off. And realized afterwards, oh, that was stupid. Like, I just give up my job. But lucky enough, the security company that I worked for, once they heard what happened, they called me immediately, said, come down and set up Zens in Dartford. That was funny. They had already picked the door, and they wanted me just to sort it out. So I went and spent 3 months there with the crazy, wherever they got these door team from. One guy had 1 arm. He turned out to be the best doorman. He had a bodybuilder like Schwarzenegger couldn't match him. Turned out to be the worst doorman. I found him one night. There was a big fight going on, mainly women. And he was lying on the ground in the middle of it, going, please stop, please stop. They had knocked him over, and he forgot to get up and was pleading with it. And I'm going, oh. It was the only door team I ever had where I sacked a third of the door team, 4 of them out of 12. 2 of them for being violent bullies. They beat up a kid. They threw him down a coal cellar stairs, and I thought I could have killed him. So I sacked them on the spot, him and another one, and fixed the door up, and then I left. And I ended up going to a little club in Romford called Secrets. Only a 6-man door. I didn't want it, but the fact was he allowed me to set up my own security company. So I could hire the 6 doormen, anyone that I want, and he'd pay me. So that was the start. And that was brilliant. We just opened. It was a beautiful club, over 25s. He wanted no messing, you know. No jeans. You had to wear a shirt. It was all of that. And I forgot that gangsters from Harold Hill, East London, they were the grandsons of all that old Canning Town crowd. They were running doors in Romford already. They had 3 doors, and they didn't want me doing this. So they started sending guys down, and we got into rows, and they came to shoot me one night. And again, this is why I say I was blessed. This one particular night, I left my shoes behind. The raw was in the boot of the car, and I left them behind, so I had to turn around and go back. And I didn't arrive till about 9:45. We're supposed to open at 9, like 9:45. And there was uproar, the police were there and everything. And apparently these guys were hiding in the car park waiting to shoot me. And we knew a few of them were, but I didn't turn up. And the doorman sort of ran them off, and then the police did the rest. So then I decided this is the one. Then what happened was about a month afterwards, there was a club called Ritzy. Ritzy Pulse, both names. Tucker went there. Now he's new head doorman, you know, the chest was out. He went there one night, and I think he was looking to take it on. But these doormen ran it, and they didn't want him there. And he was there with his Versace shirt, and it just didn't go down well. And he started laying out the law. And the beat the living crap out of him and threw him down a marble staircase. Must have been about 40 steps on it. They beat him down it. So Tucker then comes to me and offers me $5,000 to sort them out. And I'm going, but you've got a bigger team than me. Why am I sorting them out? I have my own problems with them. He said, well, I've got the shop now. I've opened up a shop in Ilford selling all these bodybuilding products. He said, they'll break the windows. Is that all you're worried about, breaking the windows? I said, go away, Tony. He stole the contract off me and I was supposed to help you now. But this is what he was like. He was like, he'd cut you out. And then 2 weeks later, come along and, hey, Terry, haven't seen you in a while. How are you going? Forget what he had done and expect you to do things for him. So he always had someone he manipulated. And Carlton would be one of them.
Was he on drugs then?
No.
Oh, right, okay.
Super clean.
Right.
Super clean.
You were saying he manipulated Carlton as well?
Yeah. He met Carlton, I think, 91. Nepping Forest. And that's the place we all went on a Sunday.
That was the place, wasn't it?
Oh, the place, because they had a swimming pool.
I never went, but I'm...
A nightclub with a swimming pool in the daytime. Now, to go on into night, but you can go there from about 2 in the afternoon. So there was sort of two sort of vibes.
Yeah.
There was the summer vibe in the daytime with all the girls into the pool, trying to find a husband, you know what I mean? Being the skimpiest of everything, All the gangsters went there. All what I call the junior gangsters went there, and all the Doorman went there. And... He met up with him there, and sort of, because Carlton had a small security company himself out of East London, so they had connections, and I suppose now the pills started to come in off the. See, we were at an age and doing the business. We had nothing to do with the raves in the fields, By the time the raves in the fields were on, I was 27.
Right.
Wasn't interested. Tucker was the same. He was probably 30, But by the time I came to the clubs, the pills came. Because it was Neville first came to me with the pill in 88. A lot of people don't know this. They were legal for the first year or two. Or at least it was ambiguous. The public didn't, there was no real worries about it. Or knowledge about it. And I'll never forget, he came to me, he says, I'm giving up drink. Never drinking again. No more hangovers. You won't believe it. You can do it with a pill. I said, what stuff you talking? It's like a paracetamol. Just take that and you can wake up in the morning ready to go to work. It's brilliant. I went, all right, give me one of them. And I never took it. Then I went to Southend, And that was another place. We used to go to Tots in Southend on a Monday.
That was another good place.
So all the doormen in Essex would go there because it was the only night off, really, And we'd be in there. And I was there one night. They were all saying, you got to take this and don't have to drink as much, and we can drive home. Oh, great. Because we drove down. So I took this down. I said, yeah, okay. Drink it. What's the big deal? I'm not getting drunk. No. So I'm having a chat with Roger and Dave. We're there. And about half an hour later, I went, stop. They went, what? I got to dance. Now, you got to see it, right? I was in a big bomber jacket, jeans, Doc Marten boots, 20 stone. Went out on the dance floor and started dancing. Oh, and I was so good. I was just like Travolta. My hands were just, everything was moving so smoothly. Then I looked around and I see everyone smiling at me, They were admiring how great I was. The song ended anyway. Roger and Dave come, Mick, get off the floor. What? No, they all think I'm great, No, Mick. You're after clearing the dance floor. They're all terrified. Because I was swinging my hands like Irish dancing, on a knee, off my face. And I was bowling people over, So that was my first. And I decided this is a bit nuts, But Tucker, what happened was Hollywood's had a Greek owner. And we had a Greek owner in Seekers. And we were a big company. They didn't like each other. Because the one in Hollywood's insulted my boss, Savis. And Savis was not going to let that lie, He was one who served up his dishes very cold, how many years went. So they went into competition, and the Greeks in Hollywood under Tucker bought Club UN.
I remember that.
Yeah, bought it in 93. And Savis said, well, we have to get into this new rave music, Mick. Do you know anything about rave? No, I know nothing about it. Just know that this pill is great. And there's no violence. He went, brilliant. So we bought by clubs. He went searching for a club, and he ended up buying the Tottenham Rex, which was a gigantic big hall that had been closed for years in Tottenham, of all places. And we ended up running that in competition to Club UK. And we called it Club UN. And we brought a tank there. And
remember it well. That's when we first met.
Yeah. Amazing. Like, he bought it. We drove it down the high street in Tottenham, advertising the club. Imagine. Little slot. Neville drove it. Like, we're thinking, Jesus, we'll wreck cars and everything. Drove it up and down. But it opened up. And the problem was that I knew nothing about raves. And it was in Tottenham. And all my doormen were alcohol doormen, you know. Alcohol and fighting, that's what we knew. And that's all we were trained on. This new rave scene had a different following, different group of kids, different everything. And I decided to get a local security company from Tottenham to come in and run the front door because they knew this scene. I interviewed them and they said, yeah, we know this scene. This is who we follow around, blah, blah, blah. And that worked brilliantly for a year. I mean, we had some fun. I remember one of your nights, you brought the Queen to Tottenham. What you don't know was, what you won't notice, she got out of a Rolls Royce and I looked at her and I thought, boy, she's very good at it. She looks like the Queen. In full regalia.
It really was her.
Yeah. Maybe I was built on my head, you know. But, so I decided, you know, we'll make a big thing of this, you know. I'll get out the security and we'll bring her into a fire exit and push people out of the way, you know. Step back, the Queen. And she comes in and she's giving it all this. And I wish we had a camera to see it. I was just in front of her on her left. Neil was on her right. And I walked through, and this kid was in front of us, you know, and he was dancing. He turned around, and I could see him going. And off his head. He's focusing, and I know he's saying to himself, that's the Queen. And all of a sudden, he just went. just crying, you know. It was magical in the early days when the pills were clean and before Thatcher got at it. There was that sweet spot where no one was on the coke. There was no cocaine, there was no alcohol. It was just clean, and everyone was nice. Most amazing thing. We did a happy hardcore night. I had 20 guys. And the average age was about 18. And they were all so nice. They were coming up and cuddling us and smiling. And we're thinking, what is going on? This was like a month into it.
They didn't do it when we did that jungle event at WN.
Well, it changed slowly, didn't it?
Yeah.
The garage got a bit... The garage I liked, and it sort of got moodier, but then the jungle really just was...
I think that night when we did Club UN in Tottenham, that was quite lively, wasn't it? There was quite a lot of stuff going on.
Well, the problem was Club UN was situated in the heart of Tottenham, police station across the road, but it was between two train stations, Tottenham Hale and whatever the other Tottenham was. And they had a half-mile run, whichever way they came, to walk down to the club. And they'd be dressed in tutus and pink hair and whistles and red bands. And they'd be coming down at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. And mugging started. And we started to get people coming in saying they'd lost their tickets, they were beaten up or whatever. And we had to find a solution because it was frightening. I remember you saying it, like, you're going to lose customers to your events and other events if you lose them. You've got to stop it. So
I thought the best one was when them fellas come in with the stolen tickets.
Yeah.
And the guy had his...
I remember that clearly. And what happened was one of the girls that got mugged, it was pure by accident. She spotted him and she recognized him immediately. So we grabbed him, brought him upstairs to the office and...
Educated him.
Yeah, educated him and said, right, give us the tickets. And then, of course, they had these names on them. And they had already told us their names. So we said, okay, what's your name? And they didn't match up and they gave some old excuses, you know. And I think that was the turning point for me because I was starting to get more and more aggressive. My character was changing. It was the time now I didn't like, you know. And we beat them severely. I remember I stripped them half naked and beat them and flung them downstairs. And
do you remember?
We were getting more and more violent.
Do you remember when Savage come out and he went, what the fuck is going on? We were like, these people are mugging people. I don't care, get them out.
Yeah, yeah.
But then when we threw them out, they went over the road to the police station to basically say that we'd fucking attacked them and beaten them up. But then when the police come over, we said, well, look, this is actually what happened.
Yeah.
They're mugging people with knives outside the event, and they've come in with the stolen tickets. And when they've come in the door, we've said we need to search them. One of them's put the hand in the pocket, so we didn't take any chances. We've obviously done them. And they then went and found the car. And I don't know if you know this, but they actually recovered fucking knives.
Yeah.
So these fuckers were mugging people with knives, and they actually put them in the car to come in the rave.
We used to have them putting guns in the car and come over to see. And if there was a problem, they'd go through the car. And if we saw them coming back, we'd alert the police because we just locked the doors because we know they're coming back with a gun to shoot.
But the police.
But it got a lot worse. You had a good event.
Yeah.
You had a clean front.
Even though we had trouble, ours were probably less trouble.
Yeah,
but
no,
some of them were like
absolutely no. But we had a few that came later on, and they were run by good people. But just the audience, they got telepathy and things like that. Telepathy, I think, had the worst problem, which I felt sorry for them because they brought a crowd, massive crowds, and the muggers were out in force. And we had to do something about it. So I spoke to the police. And the problem with the police, and I thought they wimped out and left us in too much, and this is why I was getting stressed. I was getting no help. And they didn't want, it wasn't long after the Tottenham riots. I think it was about 10 years after the Tottenham riots. And they didn't want to be seen dishing out white on black violence. So they said, you can do what you like, but we're staying out of it. You know what I mean? And I think that's very nice of you. You know what I mean? This white guy has to do it.
So then you become white van man.
So, oh, you know about that, do you? The van. I bought a van. Some old transit rubbish anyway. But they allowed me to, I said, I need to monitor. This is how I sold it. I need to monitor the route from Tottenham Hale down, you know, and to keep them safe. So I'm going to be like security on the street. And they went, that was a great idea. Yeah, lovely. Because we can't afford officers to be doing this, so you carry on. Fine. So I loaded up the van with 10 guys with hatchets, pickaxe handles, anything.
And if
any guys that were found in an alley hanging out, we went in and searched them. Now, I didn't, contrary to what's common, I didn't go in and hit them first. We searched them, or if they put up, then they got it. If we found a knife.
If you ended up in the back of that van, it wasn't a good place to be, was it?
No, we didn't take them away, Terry. You know, we did it there and then. If you had a knife, we dealt with them. I thought you put them in the van, educate them, and then put them on the side of the road. No, we educated them right there for everyone to see. The whole thing was for everyone to see it. Right. The word to get out.
If you do this, this is what happens.
Oh, yeah, and we meted it out, but we didn't. We did. And I don't think it ever stopped. It slowed it down.
After about 6 months, white van!
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they started running from the van. When the
mad Irishman in the white van.
Some poor painter was going up Tottenham High Street and people were just going, phew, you know. But it all ended up with Stush. It caught me by surprise. And I can't even remember what type of night it is. I've still kept the poster, but
it was garage Stush.
Garage was it? Yeah.
But it was the problem with jungle drum and bass and garage was there was some nice brands.
Yeah.
And then there was some, I wouldn't say bad brands, but they attracted a bad crowd. And obviously the bad crowd was people smoking crack. People would have guns some people would, I'd always be very strict. Like anyone who comes in, they go through the metal detectors, they have to be searched. I had my security making sure no one's being walked in the fire exit. So I was always paranoid someone's going to pull a gun out and shoot someone.
Yeah.
But obviously for you, you know, on those nights.
Well, those nights were terrible for us because we had 7 fire exits and there was no stairs. You just walked from the club 5 yards, open the door, you're out in the yard. So they were able to bring their friends in or bring guns in. And what happened one night was this night event was on. I didn't know it, but they had a following of Yardies from South London run by a guy called Blue and Hugh Duffus, and they were deadly. Duffus was well known. Duffus had the biggest, well, I ended up going to court with him, and he in court, they read out that he had 230 offences. Right? He won the bloody case. Right? I'll go into that in a minute. But anyway, it kicked off. They all turned up. Mercedes, Range Rover, something. Very nice. Drug dealing's a good business, you know what I mean? Here I am at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, pissing rain, watching them coming in. But over 100 turned up. And they just shoved the queue out of the way and ran to the front. And we were going, we got tickets and we're part of the event. We didn't know what to do because there was too many of them for us. There was only 30 of us. So we decided rather than have a riot, we'd let them in. Manage the situation. And that was a naive decision by me because I wasn't used to the followers of these groups. I wasn't used to Yardies. I'd never had to deal with them before. And it was a crescendo that they had never dealt with someone like me either. You know, I was one of the biggest weaknesses, I just wouldn't step down to you, particularly if you threatened me. I wasn't, you know, anyone could ask me for something and I'd go, yeah, all right then, you know. But if you started off by saying, well, this is what's going to happen if you don't, that was it. It was a game to me, you know. I'm going to win, you know. So what happened was they came in and we couldn't manage them. And they cut someone's throat for stepping on his foot. Imagine that. Now, the guy ran out the front door, blood pouring down, but he didn't get his jugular. So we went, what the hell? So we went in, and 5 or 6 of these guys were thrown out, including Duffus, the main man. So the rest then tried to come out and get him in, and we blocked them outside, shut the doors on him. So we had them banging on the doors at the front, and the guys coming out to get him in. And we thought, there's a lot more of them than us. And eventually, one of them got out and opened the door, and they were pleading. And Duffus himself, weirdly, gave me an out, and I didn't take it. He managed to get up near me, and he said, look, you're making me look bad here. Let me in, and it'll be okay. Because I was now fronting up on my side. But I wouldn't do it. I had made the decision, you know. And it kicked off. And Blue, I'll never forget it, Blue handed him this blade. Stanley blade. And Duffus looked at me, and I took it, looked at me. So I took the chain off the door. And we had wretch locks that size. I wrapped the chain, I showed it to him. I said, you're getting it. And I had a gun upstairs in the office, and I didn't think I'd have time to go get it before it kicked off, you know. And so he came running through the door and just went, woof. He hit me there. I went straight down there, opened up this completely, down into the jacket. I had an MA2 jacket, thank God, not suit. And it broke there in the zip, but the MA2 had that, you know, that fake wool. If you ever open up one of them, it's like I don't know what it's made of. And it stopped the blade going through the second layer. And it broke there. So all my face, but I didn't know, I didn't feel it. And I hit him with the chain. And afterwards I found out I fractured his skull, but I split him clean open. And he kept coming at me with the blade. And I'm fighting him then. And I decided to drop the chain and punch because it'd be easier, because it was in a small, narrow area. And I was blocking him and punching him at the same time, and he wasn't able to fight. I thought he's very bad, you know. And I was hopping off him. I think I threw over 100 punches. And he wouldn't go down. And then I had the dread came. It's hard to explain, but what happens is you get when you get tired, severely tired, you then get a rush of adrenaline, and you can actually feel it. It's like something going through you, and it gives you a burst. I also knew this is my last few hits I'm throwing here. If they don't go, he's still got a blade in his hand. And by chance, the others were now beaten. The guys had got ahead of the others. And I had a few doormen come up from, including my brother-in-law, from Southend, or from Romford, just for the night out. And they happened to arrive at that time. And they came attacking Duffus. And one of them hit him with a maglite and bent it off him. My brother-in-law threw the radio from a distance, about 5 feet, and it blasted. And he sort of went down. Between the three of us, we dragged him out and threw him outside. He still wasn't unconscious. The police then came down, and he started taking on 5 or 6 of them. Afterwards, I knew this is what crack did. He wasn't able to coordinate himself to fight, but the crack kept him from just feeling anything. And it was scary. It was really scary. And then the problem was, they shot someone then in the middle of this to very cleverly, they went back in, one of the guys that were inside, went back in and just shot a fella in the leg, started firing into the roof. To get the doorman to run back in and deal with this problem and weaken the front door. It was a clever move, actually. The doorman didn't fall for it. I just sent in 2. I said, go in there and you'll keep fighting these guys. Eventually we got on top of them. And then, of course, the black doorman, a lot of the black doormen that was with me were from that area and knew him. Didn't really want to get too involved. So it was mainly the Romford guys that were doing the fighting. And afterwards they said they were getting word then he's coming for you. Because I simply embarrassed him.
Right.
Now this was a major problem for me because I still had to work in UN. I had clubs in Romford. I knew that the head doorman who was running this, I sacked him immediately, would tell him because he was terrified of him. He didn't get involved in the fight at all. He went and hid. And he knew where I came from. He knew what clubs I had in Romford. He knew everything. And I just thought this is the worst situation possible. So there were some funny things with it though. I had 3 clubs in one area where Secrets, the Res and Opium on one stretch of the street. You drove in one way, you drove out the other way. Perfect. I blocked both ends of the street with door staff. Every night I was open. I said, any car now with any black guys in it, you're going to have to pull them up and check it, because they'll shoot the door.
Right.
And Secrets is the type of place where, everyone hung out at the front door or on the street. It's a nice club. You're not looking over your shoulder. There was no barrier doors. There was glass doors. And so a gun would cause serious damage. And I had a friend, Colin Macmillan was his name. He was world lightweight champion.
I remember him, yeah.
Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely boy. He
He's
became a
come to the
DJ.
Robes. He's come to the
Yes. And he used to come down and see me in Secrets. We were good friends. And he comes down with a carload of black guys from just down the road, Ilford, and the boys jump the car, pull him, drag him all out onto the street and terrify him. He never came back after that. I thought, oh, God. I tried to find him. He thought, I don't know what he thought, but the boys apologized to me. I said, look, you're doing the job. Then I had to try and find them. I decided, look, I'm going to have to try and find them. But I know nothing about Yardies and how they live. No, my doormen are either Russian or English, you know what I mean? They can go down to Brixton. They're going to stand out like a sore thumb. They can't ask questions. Where does this Duffus live and all of this? So I had to use a few of the doormen that on the black team that were with me on my side to try and find him. Martin Newell was one. Brilliant guy he was. He should have been my head doorman. He was, afterwards. He was when I got rid of the other fool. He would find out bits for me. But it turns out that Duffus had no house. He used to live with girlfriends. He had about 5 girlfriends. And he'd zip in and out, And I had a problem now because I lived in Romford. I had a wife and I now had a kid. 2-year-old, and I think, so I had doorman on my house for nearly 6 months, and I had to keep that from the missus because I didn't want to terrify them either. You know what I mean? So it was nasty, and I went grey. Like I had brown hair when I started. I have a photograph where I had brown hair. By the end of it, I was grey. I was stressed out. I was out to kill. Now, lucky for me. Only 2 or 3 months later, Blue got stabbed to death down in the Brixton Academy. Whatever, they were probably doing the same thing again. And then the new younger brigade killed Duffus, I think. Well, that's what I was told. It might not have been true, but that's what I heard. And it all died off after that. But after the shooting, no one came into the club. So then we had to sell it. But it was just a warehouse with a license. Stav was like, he was looking for $1 million, and I thought, it's not worth 200 grand. Who's going to take it off? You're not going to come in and say, I heard you're selling up, lads. And a few people come in. He had it advertised, and a few people came in. And Turks, I think, wanted to run it because they used to do a Turkish night on a Wednesday, and it was very successful. They were thinking of it, but they wanted to pay 300,000. Stav wanted $1 million. So he put it up for 1.2, knowing that whoever buys it will knock it down to 1 million or 900, whatever, like a car. And this young fella walked in. He's only about 23, 24. Savas saw him, He says he's coming to see the club, thinking about buying it. And he was so dismissive. He said, "Well, you go talk to him." You know, and it was the best thing he ever did, because I'm showing this young fella around the place. You know, and great nights. Now I knew we had no nights, and I'm thinking he's going to come down on a Saturday night to see it, or Friday night, and no one in it. And, but he was telling me, he wanted to bring his crowd out. It's the urban, a bit more gritty. I think he was made in Chelsea. He came from, but he happened to tell me his name, Bloom. And I says, "You won't be anything to Lenny Bloom, would you?" I went, "Yeah, I'm his son." I went, "I work for Lenny." "No, well, tell him." I said, "Oh, he's dead now." I knew that. I said, I ran his door in Ferdenzis and Jacqueline's. He went, "No, I still have Jacqueline's." And he went, so it was great. I said, "Listen, you're going to come down on a Friday and Saturday to see the place, but you know what that is like. That's always busy." I said, "Come down on a Wednesday. We have a Turkish night. It won't affect whatever you do, but it's big money, and you might want to see it." He said, "Oh, that's a very good idea." I said, "It's on this Wednesday. Come down." Arrived down around 10 o'clock. I knew by that time it would be packed. The police had blocked off the road. There were so many cars in the street. There were so many crowds. They brought over some Turkish Michael Jackson. Stop. He came in a Rolls Royce, and he had all these security. Put a jacket over his head and ran him in, and there was all these screaming women. We were going, madness. But he came down and saw this now. I'll buy it. He didn't even knock down the 200. 1.2 million, bought it. We were just glad to get out of there, because
I think at that time, when we were talking about the shootings, there was obviously he was shooting at the island in Ilford, wasn't there?
Yeah, I knew the guy. One of my doormen from Secrets went from Lloyd Day. He went from Secrets and he went to work there. And again, it was sort of a rave night, and they blocked guys and threw guys out and just said, "You're not allowed in," blah, blah, blah. And it shut the doors. But that was a proper rave club at this stage.
Yeah, it was Jungle Mania that night.
Yeah, and you had little glass peep windows, basically. The rest would be solid timber door. And a guy came back with a gun and put it up to the glass and fired through the glass. Don't even think he looked. Because he did that, he fired at head height and hit the doorman and killed him on the spot. Lloyd never worked again, I don't think, after that. So there was a lot of that. I mean, in UN, I was shot at 3 or 4 times. Guys would ramble along in the car and just let one go,
There's a Rex in Stratford as well. There was a shooting there, wasn't there?
Yeah, a doorman got shot. He had a bulletproof vest. That's how bad it was there at the end. And this guy was knocked back. He went to a car, got a gun, came back and just sneaked up behind him, put his gun in under the armpit and fired. Because under the armpit, the vest didn't come that high. And that became a thing. One in the arm. But there was one great, funny story. You'll appreciate this. It was my first... Savas was so worried about me after the Duffus incident, right? He thought, poor old Mick, I need protection for him. Who did he hire to come down and protect me the following week? Exactly 1 week later. And I said, Savas, they're not coming the following week. Wait till the next rave, garage night, then hire Ian Tucker and Dave Courtney.
I know Ian, yeah.
The 2 of them came down, they came into the office. And I knew nothing about this. He never told me even. He says, Courtney comes in and says, are you Mick? I went, yeah. He says, I'm here to protect you. He says, protect me from what? Because I still had the whole face bandaged up. But I refused to stay off work. I said, Savas, go home, you look bad. I said, I don't care. I'm working with it. So he comes in. David says, yeah, I said, what protection you give me? Colt 45, mate. Tucker never said a word. I started laughing. I opened the drawer, and I picked out this Walter PKK, this horrible gun with a big long snout. On the night, I went up to get the gun afterwards. Put it in there. And it's bottom heavy. I had no holster for it. So I was afraid I was going to shoot my stones off. I just put it in and I kept turning. So I gave it to them. I said, here, bring that back upstairs. I'll only get arrested with it. But there was nothing to do. It was I think it was a happy hardcore night or something. There was no way we were going to get through unless they came along and fired a gun. And that would be out in the front. So I said, look, I'll get you some drinks. Just to ramble around, familiar side. Come back and chat, So he used to pop up and chat. The next thing, you could open Savas's window, big, huge windows, put it up. And there was an outside sort of, it was like a castle. So they had this parapet of a castle, the front of the club. And we had a table out. I used to have a table out there, go up and smoke, you know. So I said, come out here and we'll have a few drinks. And he loved it. He was up lording it on. He was shouting at people, you know, Dave Courtney's here in the castle, you know. And he was getting drinks and he started to tell stories. And he was a funny guy, you know.
I tell you what we didn't talk about, actually. When you was at Hollywood's, about that robbery. That was the other thing.
Well, I had forgotten about this. It only got brought up on the Facebook pages about 4 years ago. And it took me by surprise because I had forgotten all about it. Right. But there was a robbery of an armed van, Group 4 security van, back in 88. And it was done by 4 of the doormen in Hollywood, of which I was the bandmaster in general, you know. It's like I was on the Titanic. They were always up to something. I was trying to hold this team together and it just kept leaking. But they pulled off a robbery and they went to jail for it. And on appeal, because the police did some underhanded things with regard to their own statements in their own books, they used them as their statements and they embellished and they got off on appeal. And not only did they go off an appeal, they got 100 grand each in recompense, which was more than they actually got out of the robbery. But for some reason, the police have been looking into the case now, the Essex Boys case, put out that the robbery was the reason that Tucker was killed. Now, I know that the robbery was orchestrated by a doorman in Ipswich called Dave Costin. And he was friends with the driver of the van who worked for Group 4. So this was the in. And he needed a few proper guys that knew what they were doing, that were brave enough to do this. And that was 2 doormen in Romford. And Tucker, for some reason, how Tucker got involved, but he knew Costin, you see, in the South End guys, so I suppose that was the connection. He brought the 2 boys up to Ipswich and introduced them and blah, blah, blah. The story goes that when they went inside for that year and a half, that money went missing. And it was Tucker who stole it, built himself a house. And this was the reason that he was killed. Now,
there's a 4th conspiracy theory now that Group 4 did it.
Group 4
Revenge. Killed the Essex Boys.
Yeah.
Don't steal their fucking... What is it? Don't rob their vans.
Yeah. Well, you know something? It was ridiculous. The vans were so bad. Hollywood's in Romford was doing so much trade that they couldn't afford to leave 40 grand in the safe on a Friday night or Thursday night because we were open 6 nights a week. So what they used to do was on a Friday, the Group 4 van would come along. I think it was Group 4, whatever. One of those vans would come along and take the money away. And on a Saturday night, do the same again. So come down twice. And one night they came down and they came in to get the money. And when he came out, he locked his keys in the thing, locked the door locked. And he came up to Chapman. He says, and he got a knife, lads. Oh, what do you want a knife for? He says, I just locked myself out. We were burst out laughing. Went into the kitchen and we brought all these knives and screwdrivers, you know. And we all went up to see because we said, that's a security van. How the hell are you getting into it with a knife? He said, oh, yeah, you wouldn't believe it now how bad they are. He started telling us. So he went up and he was there like Jimmy in the door. Next thing the door opens. Thank you, lads. Thanks. And I know for a fact some of the guys were going, that's a bit too easy there. It's a lot easier than we thought, you know. I think that's where the first thoughts came out of it, you know. But it's a theory. I don't have any sway in it at all.
But that's just what...
Yes. I don't believe so. And the guys that did the robbery, whether they liked Tucker or not, like I fell out with Tucker. A lot of people did. We didn't like him, or we didn't hate him that much to kill him, you know what I mean? It's a real stretch. And I don't think it's fair that on Facebook and places like that, you can just throw up names.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you killed him, you know. Terry Stone definitely killed him. And this is how they're talking.
Yeah, it's mad.
And I think that's really unfair because these people have families and lives and everything else. And it's now coming out. And I'm sure that they forgot the robbery after I know two of the robbers, when they came back out, completely changed their life. Stopped doing door work, stopped getting involved in any of this. And one of them set up his own practice, psychology and everything else, So, and now, fast forward 30 years and guys have just suddenly brought it up again,
Right. What did you fall out with Tucker about?
Well, mainly because of him going behind my back for the club. And then, of course, we were just in competition. Every door in Romford, I took all the doors in Romford eventually. And the reason I took them was because I went after Fisher and his crowd, these gangsters that ran the doors, and the police didn't like them anyway, so it was easy for me to get them. But Tucker took his eye off the ball. And you asked me earlier on, was he on drugs? He went from a clean-living guy who wore Versace tops to a crazed drug head within 2 years. So his first real dalliance with it. Yes, he took pills in 91 like we all did. When they first came out, we were all going, what's this? In 88, I think we had our first pill. But that was it. That was just a side thing. You did it once every 6 months, when you had a night out. But when they bought Club UN, and he nicked a dealer in there one night. And this is the story I was told. He told me himself. He nicked the dealer, and normally you give him a clipping and throw him out. But this fella had a lot of money in his pockets. So he got him taken up to the office, and he emptied out his pockets. And he had a big bag of pills, and he had about $1.5 grand in his pocket. He said, explain this. How does this work? Did you get this money tonight? He went, yeah. And the man started telling him, this is what we charge, this is what we make, this is what I will make tonight. Tony then decided security work was just pain. See, Tony was great for manipulating him into situations, but then didn't want to do the work when he got there. Let's say I manipulated you into giving me something I'm looking for, right? An into a business. But then when I got there, I got it. I'm not really interested anymore. You just left it to someone else. The clubs went aside, and the drugs were easy. Big money, very quick, Like Club UN or Club UK was probably making him the bones of $5 grand on the weekend, And then add to it Romford. I don't think he got away with it in Ipswich because Lee wouldn't allow it, but he had other clubs and things, and they were all sort of getting into the rave scene now because disco music was dying off. The new breed weren't interested in that, so everyone then had to have this, and you had to have pills because they weren't buying the alcohol, so you weren't selling the alcohol, so you had to charge more on the front door and so on and so forth. And he was making a lot of money very quickly. That's how he bought his house. It was just pure cash from this, plus his security. But that started to fall away. And the better doormen that weren't going to be doing these drugs or being involved in it left him. I picked up a few of them. They went to other places. And that's what happened. And when he died, when he died, Lee got hold of all the Hollywood door teams. Club UK was shut at this stage. The police shut it down. Yeah. But the Hollywood group was still going. There was 3 clubs and a restaurant. And Lee got them. And I took off everything after that. And then, of course, we have Basildon. Oh, that was fun. I gave up.
Was you doing Raquel's?
No. I'll tell you about that in a second. Raquel's really was closed at this stage because the death had come.
Yeah.
The Leobettes, then the death. They tried to go. They kept going for another year, but then they weren't getting the people in. But no parents would let them in. I never saw the place. Never.
You was working at another place in Basildon?
No. I was invited. I was invited by Luminar Leisure to open this new multi-club called Las Vegas, they call it. It was 4 clubs and a restaurant.
I was there. So it was on a retail park, wasn't it? Yes. Cinema.
Festival Leisure Retail Park, yes. There was Time, what was it?
Time and Envy.
Yeah, Chicago's. And it was good. And Jumpin' Jacks was the one downstairs. And I had to go see the licensing sergeant. And I went to see him. It was quite funny. I was called up at 11 o'clock at night and said they've refused the security company. They used to work in Raquel's. After Raquel's, Leisure Sec, a security company from Birmingham went in there, and they were supposed to tidy it up, and they were worse. They were letting it all go mad, and just worse. So the copper decided, we're done. We're now going to decide who's coming in here. So I went down to see him. And I gave this big speech. I just got to love everyone and treat everyone equally, and you listen. And he went, right. And they just started laughing. He said, now what's really going to happen? I went, okay, this is how it's going to be. I will treat people with respect. I don't do drugs. I'll give you the references to check that up. But there's 1% in every town who comes in and they think they're going to own it. The gangster's going to own the place. And I want permission to just deal with them appropriately. And he went, done. But he said, I want to see every doorman you got. And I had no doorman. Like, they're all working in Romford. I had about 6 spare to send to this thing, and I needed 36. I thought, how am I going to do this? So I pulled that switch and bait, basically. So every doorman in Romford went to be interviewed by these cops. He wanted to know everyone and write their names, their addresses, tattoos. He wanted to know everything about them so he could check them out. And I had all these Russians, and these all had arrived now in 95. And I sent all these down, and they're all ex-KGB, Special Forces, all this thing. And the cops were going like, okay, writing all these details down. And they were ringing me up like, where are you getting these guys from? I said, I have a good team, But they weren't going to be working there. They were working around until I got guys. And I kept searching. And eventually, then the Russians started bringing other Russians and all this thing. And we eventually opened. But my brother-in-law, who was Lebanese, dark-skinned, 30 stone, Barry White voice, he was living down there. He'd just moved down there with a girlfriend. And I left him to go over to deal with the club before it opened. It was now 2 months before it opened. And I wanted him to be sort of liaison with the owners, And I said, but take a taxi from your place, only a mile from his place. I said, take a taxi. And they'll ask you what you're doing here, and why are you going over, what's going on, because they want to know what's going on with this new club opening. And tell them, you're part of the security team, you're setting them up, you escaped from Cuba, you're arrested there for shooting 2 people, but I'm a good guy now, and I have all these Russians coming, and I said, tell them stories, just keep inventing stories. By the time we opened up, like, the police were even ringing me up, and, have you really got a hitman working for you? No, I had to explain it, but it worked wonders. And I had to go down to the cop, because he said to me, look, we've got a problem. There's a security company down here, run by Paul Smith. He expected that contract, and he didn't get it, and he's very sour. And I don't want fighting down here, and I don't want anything. So I said, yeah, there won't be. He said, that's not going to work. I want you down here, and I'm going to have him down here, and you're going to talk it out. And I went, okay. So he came down, and we talked it out, and he said, no, gentlemen, we shake hands, 4 days later, he sends a team down after we opened up. On the 5th day we opened up, he sends a team down. And I don't know where they got this guy, this giant. And they started picking on a doorman. They knew what they were doing. They picked on a doorman, knowing that he'd ring down. We had radios at this stage. Ring down now. And call the security up. And when they came up then, this big fella started the fight, and he threw a punch at me. And I remember diving back, because I thought, if this hits me, and I back into a standing thing where you put your beer. And I hit that sort of thing, and I came back then to go at him. All of a sudden, he went flying that way. My brother-in-law had come in and decided to run from about 5 yards away and hit him straight on. Because this fella was another giant. It was like 2 giants hitting together. He flattened him. We dragged him down the stairs. I remember I ran him down the stairs with another doorman, along the concrete steps and out. Blood everywhere. Manager was standing outside. Everything all right? I went, yeah. But that was the end of it. After that, we had no real problem. Jason Vella, I don't know if you heard of him.
Yeah.
He had gone to prison, and his guys tried to come in and see if they could sell drugs in there, and we battered them up and threw them out. And there was no real comebacks after that. But people don't realise this. I was the only guy in England running a security team with my own police cell. Kid you not, they had a little security office where the security guys would monitor the whole park.
Yeah.
There was a jail cell in there. Who thought that up? But the licensing guy and another cop worked with me on the door. And anything that needed to be carted off, rather than have them standing, it was a great idea because rather than have them standing, give me abuse for the next hour, they just take him away and lock him up, and at 2, 3 in the morning they let him out. And half the time I'd have to drag someone up with him in an arm lock, put him into jail. Amazing place.
Did you ever bump into Bernard Mahoney?
Yeah, I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about Raquel's. I'd never set foot in Raquel's. But an incident happened in Jumping Jacks. And he had got into an argument with one of Tucker's old guys called Gaffer. One of those old ICF guys, not the brightest spark in the land, but okay guy. He used to always hang around. He tried to get a job. He wanted a job. And he was one of those, gives a job. Light bulb didn't work. But he used to always hang around. And he got into an argument with Bernie. He spotted him. And they were both put out the door by the door staff. And Gaffer came along and squirted him, Bernie, with ammonia. And Bernie pulled out a knife and Gaffer ran off. And that was it. It was the basics of it. I didn't know anything about it. So my brother-in-law was there and he was telling me this is the incident happened. And they're telling me that he used to work in Raquel's. He was with Tucker. Do you know him? I said, no. I thought all I know is that he's got a northern accent. So a week later, 2 weeks later, he was back again, Bernie, with his wife. And Fadul, my brother-in-law, said, I think he's back. I said, go talk to him. I said, if he's got a strange accent, that's not Essex. He said, it's probably him. Bring him over to me. I was in the club. And he said, yeah, it's him. So he brought him over. And I spoke to him. I said, look, I have no problems with you, but half of Essex hates you because of this whole Tucker thing. And idiots like him are going to do it. And I can't have a stabbing or, shooting in here. So you just got to have to. And that was it. No problems. I had no issues with him at all. Didn't know the man from Adam, and he didn't know me. And this was early in the club. This was the biggest contract I ever had. I was earning nearly the bones of $2,000 a week of this one contract. And it was the first corporate contract I had. Clubs were moving away now. The corporates were buying up hundreds of clubs all over the country. So it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And they ran it differently. They were very cold and they'd send me emails and letters. They wouldn't, I wasn't used to that. But it was the corporate way of doing things. And if you put a foot wrong, or if you upset the police, they would go inside with the police and their license, obviously. So we'd be out. So I wasn't going to risk anything with Bernard or anything, particularly in the early days. After about a year or so, when I was settled in, I could have made my own decisions on things, And I think I would have done it better. I wouldn't have any problem with Bernard in, because he didn't come there to cause trouble. It was Gaffer was a bit of a div,
And with the Hollywoods thing, obviously Hollywoods, you obviously had yourself, Lee Chapman, Tony Tucker there. You had these guys that done this secure call van robbery, and there was also a murder there as well. Was that linked to the?
No,
that was something else.
No. This was it. It's like
you said, you were surrounded by fucking
man on the
badness.
Titanic. Puppeteer. The strings kept breaking. They kept getting away. All right, I'm not going to mention names. I don't want to. They've moved on. They live lives. It wasn't it's dramatic. Well, it was dramatic, but one of my doormen, one of the ones I really liked, and I wish I hadn't lost, had an ex-wife who he used to still look after and just go check up and all that. And she had a new boyfriend. He was a DJ in Faces in Ganshill, in a nightclub there. And he went around one night and apparently he was in the process of beating the crap out of her when this doorman turned up. So they got into a fight. And this doorman it was no match. But when he hit him a few times, when he fell, he hit the old houses with the old Victorian cast iron radiators.
Yeah.
I don't want the big ones with the edges. He hit that. He died immediately. If he had called the police then and said, look, this is what's happened, I think it would have been a much better outcome. But what happened was he called 2 other doormen. Oh, God. He couldn't have picked 2 worse ones to help him solve this. And they came up with the idea of, we got to bury him. And we can't have him identified, so we'll have to decapitate him and hands and legs off. And that's what they did, and they buried him away. And that would have been fine. But a year later, this happened now before, obviously, we all came to Hollywood. Or in the early days of Hollywood. But about a year later, one of the doormen, the police kicked in his door because he was involved in something else. And they searched his house for guns. Didn't find anything. It's all done. And one of the cops sat down in the chair in the sitting room and looked over the cupboard and saw a piece of paper underneath and went over and picked it up, opened it up. And he was the one copper in Essex who was dealing with the Bernie Burns murder. And here was details of Bernard Burns, his house, what time he gets in and out from the deeds, and they knew instantly you were involved in this and pressured him, and he folded and brought him to the body, and that was it. And they all went down for it, you know. It nothing to do with Hollywood as such. It's just that they were all into everything.
Right.
You know, that's why I always say, you know, we all lived on that grey line. There's a grey line that everyone in Essex, I think, travelled, bar maybe 10%. So like there was 10% of people are just by the book, never ever break the law. Yeah. And then there's 5% over here in the black that never do anything right. They're just evil. The rest of us are travelling this grey line, and I lived most of my life for it. I don't deny that. And you veer to good, which I always thought I did. You know, I had morals and everything else. And there's others who don't. And you live your lives through it. You know? Right. And sometimes you like the people that are on the wrong side, right, and dislike the ones that are on the right side, and vice versa. It's a mixture, you know. And that's humanity, you know. And I started, of course, then all these great doormen went, and other doormen replaced them, which wouldn't have been, should I say, they were cleaner and not as violent, which is probably a good thing, because it was a fair savage door, you know, and we didn't apologise for it at the time because I thought it was needed. Yeah, you know, you're
with a firm hand.
If you owned a club, Terry, you spend 5 million on, I can close that club. I'm probably the only one who can close it as a head doorman by either selling drugs or deciding to kill someone on the door one day. I can ruin your business. A barmaid can't do that. A DJ can't do that. So you need good security, and you need them to protect your asset. Yeah. And there's different ways of doing it. But I just from the very day one when I arrived in England, I worked in a club down in London on my own. Imagine I got the job out of a job centre. They put me in a club on my own, a rookie. I was only a tiny little dive, you know, after 12 dive bar. And there was a gangster used to always drink in there and used to always dictate to everyone, including me. And I'm thinking, we always plumb off him and trying to, you know, ease him off. But the more they did that, the worse he got. So I thought, this is not the way to carry on. Until I got into a fight one night with this big heavyweight boxer, one of Terry Lawless's boxers, home from America. He was showing off to his friends. And I was standing on the dance floor. I was walking around. I turned left and I ran into the corner and knocked the table and fell down. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? What happened? He punched me. And I went flying. And then we got into a fight. The next thing, his friends started kicking him because I got the better of him. And there was a glass that was underneath the table. And I got that and I broke it. Pulled it down his arm. And everything stopped then. The management came over. He was bleeding everywhere. This gangster who was supposed to trying to, you know, get me to work for him, like, was still sitting there. I thought, you didn't help me. So I dragged him out as well. And from then on, I decided I'm not dealing with these, because you're always on edge, you know. And I didn't want to be always trying to keep the peace. I thought, deal with it violently, shut them up, And you never have to deal with them again. Because they'll know that if you come back again, it's going to be worse. And it served me well.
Yeah.
Not too well, obviously. I got hurt then. I don't know what I was doing. My wife said to me, don't be taking it. But I got a promise of a pub chain. If I did this one pub, and then others will follow. It was over in West London, which is not my area at all. And I did it there. And I had no one to do it, so I decided to do it myself with this young fella. And it was a really druggy pub. And it kicked off one night with 10 of them. They attacked the young fella on the front door, and I ran in, and it just went mental. And it was one of these old-fashioned bars that had where the band played, it had these stair rails around it, you know. Right. And at some stage, I threw someone into it, or they threw me into it, but it broke. The spindles all came out. So then we started using them as bats. Wreckage. The front window went out onto the street. It was I was winning, like we were winning. It was just chaos because half of them didn't want to fight, and others did. And then every time they got hit, they sort of backed into the others, so they all got trapped. And this was going on until one of them got up, climbed up onto the bar, picked up the glass ashtray and threw it, hit me right there, and obliterated the eye socket and blinded me. And
was you actually blinded one eye?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had some sight in the beginning, but I had 3 detachments over the space of a year.
Oh, so you had a detached retina from
Yeah, and they laser it back. What happens is when you laser, you take away some of the sight by lasering because it's a big scar. And then it detached. So in the end, it was just full of scars, so I could see nothing out of it. But I can see movement. And at one stage, I was under a lot of pain of it. And I said, look, I'll take it out. And they said, don't, because if you take it out, you'll always be doing this, moving around. Whereas with it, I don't have to do that. I can see. But I was out for about a year. And I decided I'm just getting away for door work for a while. Because this was before, when I had Basilon. I said, I'll take a break and go back doing what I wanted to do and go back gaming again, go back playing chess and just de-stress. And the Olympics were coming up in 97 and I wanted to have a go at that. So I did that. So I was out for about 8 months and resting up and recharging basically. Because as I said, I'd lost the plot in UN. The marriage was starting to go. I had a young kid and everything was just in the way. And I was too much in protective mode that I wasn't actually participating in my marriage. You know what I mean? I was like protecting it. And it was dreadful time. But I got through it and I went back on the doors and it took me another year before I had a fight. Because I threw a punch at a guy one day and I missed him completely. Right. Like he was there in front of me, but no, he wasn't. He was a foot further back. So my balance was out, you know.
And when obviously on the 6th of December 1995,
I know exactly where I was. I was
when the Essex Boys got murdered. I mean, when you heard that, was you shocked about it, or?
I was, because Gary Mott rang me up on the 7th. Weirdly, they let out the names and things very early on in the news. I think the following day, the lunchtime news or something, who was out. But before it was on the news, the village had happened in Rettington. Gary Mott, everyone in Essex knows everyone, but someone in that village recognised the car, the Jeep, and rang Gary to say, I'm sure it's Tony's Jeep, but I'm not sure, but something bad has happened down there. The police are everywhere, And then it came on the news, I think, without names, it just said there was a shooting, 3 people shot or something. And then, of course, as you know, everyone like Carlton is famous for everyone's ringing Tony to see, is it true? Or answer the phone, come back to me, and no one's answering. So I think by 6 o'clock, everyone knew. But Marty rang me in the lunch and said, I think it's Tony. I went, nah. And we were shocked. I never considered Tony to be that violently aggressive. I mean, it's come out later on that he used to, mug people. I didn't hear much of that, I know that he was arrogant and he definitely cut people up the wrong way, because his sense of humor was to talk about you. You're getting fat or bald head or something, you know. He'd point out your little insecurities. That was his fun. So that winds people up. You know. I never thought it was enough to get shot. You know. And I do agree it was about Tony. I don't believe it was about Tate or Rolf, you know. But he did start threatening, and the problem was when Lee Betts died, he panicked. He really panicked. And he was of course, he was heavy on the drugs as well, which makes you more, you don't operate smartly. You just scattergun everyone, threaten everybody, scream and shout, you know. Now, if he shouted at me, saying, "Oh, I'm going to kill you," he must have done that to 100 people. They'd laugh at it, you know. But the guy he did do it to believed it and thought, "I'll get in there first," you know. Now, whether that was stealing homes, I don't know. I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't believe you go down a dark laneway at night to do a drug deal. Why would you?
Unless you know who you're going to meet.
But even if you do, Terry, I'll come to your office and we do it. And no one's looking in the windows. You know what I mean? We can sit here and drink all night and count out the drugs and count the money. You can't count in a car. You can't weigh stuff. You can't check the purity of drugs.
I mean, someone told me, and again, it could be bullshit, it could be true. But someone told me that they were lured there, and the reason they were lured there was because they were told this is where the plane's going to land, this is what's going to happen, this is like a run through.
Yeah,
so
and
it was a rehearsal. So I think that is the only credible reason they be there. That's the only credible one, in my opinion. But
it makes sense.
Who knows?
And I agree with you. It makes sense. I mean, that's why I'd go there, because you said, you know, have a look, scope it out. What do you think? Is it a good idea, bad idea? So that's how all these gangsters do things. You know, they plan it out first and they talk about it and they think, no, that's a terrible idea. We'll do it this way. So you go see it and you think, well, yeah, we can hide here. Because a field is not a good place to be mugging anybody. You know, that plane is going to land. It's not going to land at a ditch. It's going to land right in the middle of the field. That actually, ironically, is a terrible field for it because it's a big pond on one side. You could end up in the pond. But that wasn't important. People make great importance to that. I don't. If I'm telling you, I have a field I want you to come and look at, it doesn't matter if it's a matchstick.
No one's going to go. I mean,
or 10,000 acres. Yeah, no, you're not going to check it in advance.
Before, have they?
Correct. Yeah. So you go down and have a look. And there's obviously, he was booked to go to the cafe that Hollywood's owned in Romford, the Global Net, for dinner that night. They were all going. So I think it was a quick check. Let's have a quick look, take 5 minutes, have a good look around, off we go to dinner. I don't believe any other thing. So I don't believe in coincidences. I believe there's a reason for everything. Drugs is a very weak, no, listen, it's a theory. And drugs theory could be as good as anyone else. It just doesn't fit. You know, it's not logical. You know, I've met lots of dangerous guys back then. The more dangerous they are, the more I got it into secrets into the office up on the third floor, because now you're not, you're a bit edgy. Just to balance it. I didn't go. See, there was a lot of things. Gangsters had this thing, and it's never come out in any form, and I don't think anyone even understands that this happened. Gangsters lent their name out a lot. Now, to explain that is like, I have a drug deal with you. It's going to be 100 grand, or you owe 100 grand to me, and I'm trying to get it, right? If I could say, Terry Adams wants this money off you. In other words, I'm here on behalf of him, and put his name up, and get him on the phone even to talk to you, you know. You're more likely to pay it out. So they used to always use their names. Sometimes they wouldn't ask permission and they use their names. I've had guys come to the door, do you know who I am? I work for Stevie Hunt. And I go, let me ring Stevie here now and we'll talk about it. Oh no, there's no need. You know, but sometimes they did. They actually got permission from the big guys. Carlton even used to lend out his name. I was thinking, and you get a drink. For whatever happened, he'd come back and give him a drink, you know. There was all this sort of weirdness going on. So you didn't know who was threatening you and who wasn't. And I can see people getting paranoid and getting frightened. And if you get frightened, you can
Do silly stuff, yeah.
You can do silly stuff, yeah.
Well, look at Nipper Ellis. I mean, he shot Pat Tate, didn't he?
Out of pure fear.
Yeah, because he thought he was going to get killed. So
Yeah. He had a terrible gun. He didn't do a great job, but the point was he was brave enough to do it to a guy who was 4 times his size. I don't know if people realise how small Nipper Ellis is. You know, he's called Nipper, but he was a brave goer. I know people who know him well, and he was a doer. You know, he was a robber, and he was up for things. A lot braver than Tucker was. Tony Tucker was the ones that used others to do the job and dictate it, you know, and praised them when they did well. And that's how, you see, I've hired, I don't know, I try to work out how many doormen I've hired over the years. Probably 2,000 or 3,000. One for a week and one for 20 years. It doesn't matter. But they come in various shapes and sizes. And the main 2 sizes are very confident guys. And the guys have no confidence at all. And it's amazing how many doormen don't have confidence. They start off at 9 stone, 10 stone guys bullied at school, get into the gym, do a bit of gym work, and grow up to 13, 14 stone, become doormen, but they still have the same issues, you know. And I've had many doormen, you know, I've always been careful, knowing who to shout at, I know who to praise, I knew who to say, like, don't tell anyone the rest of them, but you're the best doorman here, and I'm expecting you to really keep this. I won't be here tonight, but I need you now. And they go, yes, Mick, because they want the love. And Tucker was able to just zoom in on that and get people to do it. He always had his followers and his monsters. The problem was he couldn't get Chapman to do it. Chapman wasn't stupid enough to do that. And he wasn't there to bully him, and he wasn't there to do it. He had likes of Carlton. Carlton was great for a while. When Carlton went to collect money on a job that Tony was owed money for, friends of mine wouldn't pay him. And he sent Carlton to be the muscle, you know, get this money back. And they just laughed at him and told him, get out of here now or else. And I think Carlton was smart enough to get out of there and just, you know, this is not working. And also Tony looked at it, you didn't get me my money. What good are you to me? Now I have a new monster. And he came out.
So like a Pat, yeah.
Yeah. And give it 2 or 3 years, Pat would have gone as well and something else would have come on.
I mean, so obviously, you know, you've lived through like the noughties. Well, I mean the 90s, but
yeah.
The noughties.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously you've lived through all this mad stuff, and like you said, you've employed all these doormen and had all these crazy experiences.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most violence you've seen in one night? Was it when that guy cut the guy's throat in?
There was nothing come close to that.
Wow.
Faction fighting was what I was great at. Now, faction fighting is hard to explain to people. It's not the same as the ICF used to do, where 100 people run it and then run back and then run forward and throw a few punches. Faction fighting is about 20 guys, 30 guys, and you have certain rules and certain things, and you can beat. Like that night, we took on 100 and we won. Because if one knocked the guy clean out, they wouldn't go and pick in another fight. They'd see who was wrapped up in another fella, knock him out, then that's 2 men free to go on to the next one. There was a method to do it. That was just, we were on a loser there. I don't know how we got through it.
Right.
By pure experience and just giving it
Like
everything.
I said, the man upstairs was looking
Man
at
upstairs, God has always been on my side. I've always had, you know, I have a very religious wife. She used to know things, you know. She used to ring me up and say, be careful tonight, there's this. And I used to just laugh at it, you know. And then something would happen, you know. I think it's weird.
So you still work?
I've been shot at loads of times. I'll give you a funny story, right? This is how, on another day, it could have gone a different way, you know. I've had a lot of 8 doormen I've had shot. Once I was down in Pizzazz, the bane of my life. No matter how professional I got, when I got to Pizzazz, everything went wrong for me. Just I couldn't do anything right. I slapped up and barred the owner because he caught me by surprise when I went to search him. I didn't know who he was. It was the opening weekend. And he shoved me off and I got an adrenaline rush and around that. It's only afterwards I found out he was the owner, you know, and I said, no, he's not coming in. It didn't work out at all. But I left because I just couldn't get on with them. And at the same time, I was working in a wine bar up the road. And I knew them. So I used to work there myself. come down to Pizzazz afterwards. So now I was finished with Pizzazz. I stayed on the wine bar, but I said, look, I got to go, lads. You got to get someone else. I'll give you time to get someone else. But they owed me wages. So one, I finished in the wine bar at 1 o'clock in the morning. Came down, big trench coat on me. Had the mobile phone. I was ringing Romford, John in Romford, to say, I'll be down later on. Yeah, how busy is it? Checking the other doors. Standing outside, waiting for them to come and bring me my check. And I turn around, and next thing, I got bang in the head, a ferocious bang. And I fell in the door and fell on the ground. And next thing, I could hear the doormen that were inside the door shouting, And they were screaming, shut the door, he's been shot. And I crawled over against the wall and I thought, I've been shot. I put my hand and I could feel blood there. And I thought, oh, Jesus. I said, if I'm shot, I've been shot in the head. Why am I still alive? And I had this big conversation with myself. I'm talking away to myself. Am I dead? No, not dead. And then I could hear them talking. So if I'm dead, I can't be hearing them talking, Eventually, anyway, ambulance came, police. I'm outside, they're checking me. They went, no, you haven't been shot, man. He threw a pint glass from 50 yards away and hit a moving target, because I'm on the phone. And when I'm on the phone, I can't stand still. I'm walking up and down, walking up. And he landed, come out of the sky, landed down, butt head, hit me right there. And that was like one of many incidents. There was another guy, we threw him out, and he went home. And of course, when they come back, you always know there's a problem. You come back, he says, come up here. I went, you come down here. Because Pizzazz was down in a hollow. They had a path up here, it was about 50 yards away, where the guy threw the glass. He says, come up here, I want to shoot you. I said, you can come down and shoot me here. We had this surreal conversation. No, you come up here and shoot. I said, what are you going to shoot me with? He says, what do you mean? A gun? I said, is it a revolver or is it an automatic? He went, it's an automatic. Oh, okay. So I come down here and I shoot you. I forgot my finger, I thought we were having fun. Next thing he said, okay then. And bang. And all the glass veranda above me came down on top of my head. I'm thinking, what happened? He's after throwing a glass. He went, oh God. He had a gun. But because he's up in the height. Now, I don't think I like to think he wasn't trying to shoot me, trying to scare me. But he was up in the height, so maybe he just misjudged it. And he hit the glass. And it came down on top of me. Another day, I'd been hit. I mean, I had real problems with a young fella. He was what I call mid-range, son of a gangster, nephew of a gangster, lived a gangster life. And he caused trouble in one of our clubs, and he went away and came back with a pistol and opened up. Nearly point blank from about 20 yards. He hit cars, he hit the window above it, the office above it, he hit the door next, he hit no doorman. So the doorman chased him. So he ran away and he dived into a car and got off. His name was Mark Osborne, and we went hunting him down. But he was arrested before we got him done. And a statement was taken from the young fella on the door. I wasn't there now. It's nothing to do with me now, but it was my door. And they arrested him, so he was going to court. But he was obviously connected because I had Terry Marley, a gangster from Raynham, contact me. And Terry was old school. Don't like that. Go sorry, you'd have to listen carefully to understand him, He was like, yeah, we can't have this sort. And he came out with the threat. Now, I had already dealt with him in Raynham, and he'd forgotten who I was, and he was threatening, basically. He basically said, we don't want trouble. Now, the minute someone says that to me, it was like, depending on how you receive me, there will be trouble or not. So he's basically putting in an inverted threat there. So I just let it go. But I put it on speaker because the doorman told me he was calling. And I could see there were local doormen in Romford, in Harold Wood, so they knew who he was, and they knew the guy, Osborne. And I could see they were nervous, So I said, stay, guys, while I talked. And I'll sort it out, don't worry. They thought I was going to placate him. So I let him ramble on, and he was going, sort it out with Taz and Pat. Get it all, go away, tell your young fella, go away, blah, blah, blah. And when he was finished, I went, no, that's not happening. I said, that idiot shot him. We're going to get him. And if you're in the way, I'll get you too. And you can come down here or I can come down to Cranham. And I gave him his address because I knew from before I had his address. That was the end of that. Next thing, less than a week later, these guys rang up and says, Terry Adams wants to talk to you, wants to send some guys down. And these were these two guys again. And they came down to see me. They were very polite, and they put Terry Adams on the phone. Now, I had worked, and my mate had worked for Terry Adams when we were up in North London, so I knew I was talking to him. I said, Terry, it's me. Oh, yeah, we'd love this to be sorted out. And I went, well, that's not going to happen, £1,000 isn't going to cut it, so we sorted it out. So there was a lot of this incestuous gangster stuff going on, and they'd put pressure on you in different ways. But I found that when you just say no, and I'm ready to fight, I used to do that all the time. I used to always say, I accept. That used to get him all the time. I had one with the Blundell, Eddie Blunt, and it was like a problem came out, and he was going, he's shouting and roaring. I said, I accept. So you accept what? I accept your challenge. I'm ready. Whenever you want, I'm here, and I'll come to you or you come to me. It's okay. A lot of times they just go, no, we let that go. Gangsters do that. They don't go around fighting everyone. They just bully the little guy. I've heard so many stories about the Adams. The Adams, Club UN was a mile from where they operated out of. And I knew the guys that worked for him. Two of my guys worked for him as well on jobs, and they were savages. They'd go out and they wouldn't just beat a guy up. They'd take an axe to him, take a finger off thing. That's how savage they were. But the Adams didn't do it. But they had to get those guys to threaten me, and I knew that. Right. They weren't selling drugs in my club, but if they were, I would say, well, I know your guys. I've got guys like that too. I can come to your door, They avoid those type of things,
right. And what are you doing now, Mick? Because obviously, you're how old are you now?
63.
Wow.
Yeah.
You still look in great shape though.
Yeah, still trained, still
mid-50s. So you look good for you.
Thank you very much.
You're
just being polite now, aren't you?
No, I'm not being honest. But you still do the door now?
No, the doors are all gone. All those doors are now turned into blocks of flats.
So what are you doing now? What's your thing now?
I still have security, but mainly static security and Pitsy Market and things like that, My sidekick is now doing all those boats on the Thames.
Right.
Every boat you see, John is doing them. But I'm back in Ireland now. I've retired.
Oh, amazing.
My wife has a cake shop there, and
what part of Ireland? So
Tipperary. Yeah.
If I'm in Tipperary, I'm going to come to that cake shop.
When are you ever going to be in Tipperary?
I've never been to Ireland. I've only been to Dublin once, but I'd like to go.
Dublin's a good place. Yeah. Cork. But yeah, we're sort of in the country. There's not a lot there, Terry.
Right. It's probably nice. It's peace and quiet. Probably
very, very peaceful.
Take a nice breath of fresh air.
Very peaceful. The people there think I'm a lovely guy, and I run a cake shop. That's the way I want it now.
Mick's a baker. Was it pat cake, bake me a cake?
Yeah, I'll make you a cake. You won't refuse.
But Mick, honestly, it's been so good catching up with you. I mean, I think last time I see you, it must have been like 95, 96 at Club UN.
Yeah.
And then obviously we drifted apart. But funny enough, actually seeing a podcast with you on it, and I just thought, I know that guy. And then when I saw Bernard, and obviously Bernard did our first episode, he actually said, you should definitely get Mick on. Mick's got some great stories. And Lee said the same thing.
Do you know what I want from you, though?
Yeah.
Right, it was the one thing, because you mentioned it on your podcast, and it came flooding back to me. The first time I ever heard the name Dave Courtney was in your Scene magazine. He had this Dodgy Dave's. A 2-page thing, and I read it one day because I was bored in the office, and I had no interest in all your DJ stories and that. But I saw this Dave, and he sounded like real gangster, but he was funny.
Oh, he's so funny.
I thought, who is this guy? And then I met him because he used to come to your events.
Do you know something? He could have been a stand-up comedian.
Yeah,
he really was.
I thought he was, actually. He had the patter, and he had it very quick. You got to be very smart to do that. Listen, a lot of people, I told you that story about, UN when he came to save me. Yeah. Came to protect me with his gun, But I met him a few times. The Erotica show, we ran, Savas had the Erotica show and I had a share in that. We ran that for 12 years and he'd turn up there, And one day he he was on one of the stalls, you know, looking at sexual objects.
Yeah.
And I sneaked up behind him and I looked over, and that's how quick he was. The minute he saw me, he went, "Can I have the large one, mate?" No, just like that. He was. I love the guy because, and forget about all the gangster stuff, right, and the bluff gangster stuff, right. I defy anybody in the 90s to be 5'8" tall and 13 stone weight to run the dawn when he did.
Yeah.
They respected him.
Yeah.
To have the brains to run a security company. I ran a security company, you had to deal with all sorts of rubbish. He did as well.
Yeah.
And I admire him for that. You know, you have to have something about you to get there. Now, yes, he'd like to tell a tall tale. People should let that slide. That's part of the fun in the name he was.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's very tragic what happened to him recently, but I thought it was a wonderful thing he did with the video. And I think there'll be a lot more of that, you know, to let someone know this is why I'm doing it. Because a friend of mine years ago killed himself and left the kids and they left all wondering, like, why didn't he talk to us? What was wrong with him? Why did he do this? No, whereas if you do a video like that, like he did, and explain it all out, it's great.
Someone said to me, you know, whether you agree with it or not, whether his family agree with it or not, that's obviously what he wanted to do, and you just have to respect his wishes. So
yeah,
R.I.P. Dave, you know, and
yeah, I agree. I thought it was very classy, and his friend that spoke about him was very classy as well. But yeah, R.I.P.
Well, Mick, thank you so much for coming on, mate. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Reunited after all these years.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to the Criminal Connection podcast. Mick Kelly, what a legend, what a great guest. We've got plenty more legends where Mick come from, so make sure you tune in next week for another great guest. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the Criminal Connection podcast, and I'll see you on the other side.